Hi, it's Chris from Intentional. We're here today to talk about advertising in the time of coronavirus. This is actually our third edition. We've put out a weekly update each week over the last 3 weeks. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the others, maybe start with week one. But the insights that we're going to share today are the most up to date and provide the biggest insights around what we've seen, particularly over this last 7 days, but also this trend in 21 days that we're now into in terms of this COVID-19 pandemic. I'm joined once again from agency founder Adam, who's going to run us through some of the insights as we've seen them over this last 7 days.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so let's jump right into it. As Chris mentioned, we're going to do a week in review of the last 7 days. So since from March 27th to April 3rd. And we've got a few things to cover. So just as a quick overview, let's just jump in. So we're basically doing we'll have 4 sections that we'll walk through today. So where are we at now? What's happened in the last 7 days on all our channels? What are brands doing? So what have we seen brands doing? And are there any themes or any ideas that we could pull and use from what we're seeing other people doing? And third section, different section for today is just putting together some of the freebies and giveaways. There's been a lot, so rather than trying to pull everything together, just putting together some that will might be particularly relevant for digital marketers, digital advertisers. And then lastly, we'll turn it over and let's listen to hear how you're seeing things and how your account's going, and is there any way we can help you. So let's jump into it. First section is where are we at right now, and again, these are the last 7 days, and particularly as related to Australia. So in the last 7 days, we've seen an escalation to a stage 3 lockdown. So far more self-isolation and working from home right now. We've also seen the last round of government stimulus. In fact, we've seen sort of almost add-ons to that as well now with childcare as well. So there's quite a few things that have happened there. And I think, Chris, I don't know if you've been hearing any of this from clients as well, but I think what that's done is that the last 2 rounds of government stimulus have, at the very least, taken brands and clients that we've been working with from being in survival mentality and just, can I even make it, to at least there's a floor now, and at least maybe there's even the starting to be able to think about, all right, well, now that we are receiving this assistance, now we can actually start thinking about what can we do with our brand, what can we do with our customers. Chris, do you have any more to say on that particular thought there?
Yeah, I think JobKeeper, which was the name of the recent stimulus package here for Australian companies, I think it was the first kind of twofold where both the business would benefit in the sense that it was linked to employing people or keeping people employed, but also clearly it made a difference at an individual level. Is there people that maybe can't work in retail or work in retail operations, cafes, gyms, etc. There was now a way for the employer, rather than everyone who was just being stood down. That was kind of the trend in week 2. This third week now is there might not be a job, but there's a way in which to keep a salary engaged. So I think we've seen that twofold, a little bit more buyer confidence, but definitely in just talking with clients and seeing the news shared, there's a sense of I wouldn't say optimism, but there's a sense of hope that it's not just survival. We will get through this. It's just going to look very, very different than our 2020 we had planned.
Yep. And so this kind of feeds into where, how we've been discussing or talking about this as an agency just internally. So, we're really thinking that however this plays out with the virus, we're really probably going to have around 3 stages, maybe 4. And so the first stage is, the knee-jerk reaction, the response to, what's just happened, and everyone just trying to adjust to this new reality. So I'd probably say we're still in this phase, although just anecdotally and even just talking amongst the team, it almost does feel like that initial knee-jerk has, I guess, we've all done that now, and that now we're in a, I won't say better place, but at least we're in a place to be able to think about the future as well. So I feel like we're still very much in this phase, but maybe that initial shock of it has maybe dissipated somewhat, and now we're beginning to go, all right, how do we now cope and work together better in this phase? So this phase, we're talking, this could be the 3 months to 6 months, and then the slow recovery after that is where confidence starts coming back into the market, etc. And we'll eventually one day get to a new normal. So we're very, very much away from that. So whatever we share today, same as last 2 weeks, mileage may vary depending on what industry you're in, and depending on what channels you're across. So let's jump into, with that context, let's jump into it. Probably the big news for this week, or at least what we're seeing confirmed, like not just in our accounts, but across the web, is that really for search, which is huge for most businesses, bottom of the funnel, revenues there. The big news really is that desktop is back, and it makes a lot of sense. That now that we're all working from home, now that we're less mobile because we're forced to self-isolate and we're not supposed to be going out and about, desktop is back. And so really one of the things that we want to encourage you to do is have a look at your data for search and just have a look, is desktop winning again for you? So we actually have a client where unusually they have a desktop offering, and it's been a challenge in a mobile first world. What do you do when you have a desktop offering? But they actually saw a surge in the last 7 days. And so be looking for desktop behavior, be looking for device shifting behavior with your customers. And because we're back on desktop or laptops, it also does another thing in that, and the bigger screen experience, and obviously easier to browse, it's much easier to research. And so if you're in a niche where research, it's a very research heavy niche or category, it's probably a good one for you to be able to be putting more content out rather than less, because that desktop and that research mode is going to really help you there. Also looking potential drops in CPCs. So if you're on smart bidding, maybe that's taken care of for you. But if you've been manually bidding towards mobile, then definitely be looking at switching back to desktop and seeing if that can save you on your CPCs there. The other sort of follow-on, which is probably no surprise as well, is that the coronavirus has really upset algorithms. And so one of the things to do is to be watching for, this isn't just in search, this is also for display in Facebook, but I guess search being the pointy end of the stick is where you want to be making sure that this is working for you. But be looking at your conversion volumes. So be looking at the campaigns that you're running, be looking at the conversion volumes that each of your campaigns are getting. And if you're starting to see, because of the drop in volume of users searching, if you're starting to see your conversion or micro conversion numbers drop, that might be enough to basically throw the algorithm out. And so you may either need to reset your algorithm, so you may need to get campaigns going again, or you may have to go back to manual. So be looking out for that big change, particularly if you're in a category that's been hit really, really hard. Probably the last thing to share for search, particularly anything Google related, is that Google are suppressing ads for anything containing the words COVID or coronavirus. Or if any of your products or services are leading to a landing page that proposes to offer solutions for coronavirus or COVID. So be very, very careful with what words you're using. Be very careful to not be using these words, because likely you're probably going to be banned, or at the very least your quality scores are going to suffer. So just be on the lookout for that. In other news, we're also seeing that recently it really blew up that because Google has also been blocking these words for organic, that news media has caused a big problem for news media who earn a lot of income from their advertising. So because news media outlets can't actually use these terms anymore, they're estimating a loss of $50 million US in the next 3 months because of this. So yeah, some interesting times for Google to work through. You also might be seeing that probably more so on display. I haven't seen so much on search. I don't know, Chris, if you have, but more so on display, you'll also be seeing some Google offering some free impressions for the WHO and public health and safety notices. Okay, so that's the wrap up of search in the last 7 days. Let's just talk about trends in terms of the actual search terms. Probably some of these things are things you've already seen or you've already been noticing in your own data. But last week we talked about how there was a lot of sort of stockpiling nature terms that were that had skyrocketed. This week, basically, we can already see the evidence of that finishing. So we already made a comment last week that, you know, just because these turns were spiking because people were stockpiling at home, probably doesn't mean that that spike is going to continue indefinitely. And so we're actually already starting to see, just 1 week on, we're already starting to see that, you know, any terms to do with stockpiling, they've already started, you know, plateauing or coming back down. Although there are some terms that are still going strong, so anything to do around working from home or teleconferencing, computer equipment, that's still working well as people sort of navigate and realize what they don't have and what they need at home to get set up for working from home. Anything to do with games, board games, online games, poker, we're seeing that. Anything to do with creative arts makes a lot of sense, I guess, with kids being home. So anything to do with arts or creativity or crafts is good. And unfortunately, one of the big surges is also to do with wills. So I guess as people realize that this is becoming closer to home, that it might be a good time to get your personal affairs in order. So not a lot of great, amazing news there, but worth noting. Impressions.
Adam, just on those the searches that up, just I think we'll definitely talk through what brands can do in a little bit, but just seeing that there around the creative arts made me think of a client that is launching some things today, which is focused around a home activity. They actually sell soccer balls. They're a social enterprise, but they've done a call to action to make a rubbish ball, which people in developing nations, unfortunately, that's the only ball that they can make. So I think there is an opportunity to think through how any of these, if there's any gamification you can add right now, or if there's any particularly family-based, anyone with kids, I'm sure you're pulling your hair out trying to think of activities, taking it day by day. So I think while these impressions are obviously applied to industries, they are starting to sort of show evidence of maybe some ideas for brands to take a look at as well in there. So I just thought worth adding that one in to
really
see,
good thought.
You know, something creative you can do with your brand this week.
Really good thought. We'll come back to that actually, because as we go through creative that other brands have done, that taps into one of those ideas. So we'll come back to that one. And funnily enough, impressions that are down are quite amusing actually. A lot of them to do with personal care, so anything to do with perfume, deodorant, toothbrush, alarm clocks, ties, heels, belts. So basically anything to do with making yourself, suitable at work. It seems like all of that's out the window this week. And probably the big one that impressions are down is Airbnb. So probably to no surprise because of the travel lockdowns. In fact, just before jumping on this call, I saw an article just talking about how the rental, apparently there's been 20% plus more rental properties on the market, which they believe to be from all the Airbnb hosts who just don't have any guests anymore. So now they have to return back to the normal rental market. So that's going to be an interesting space to watch to see how that plays out. All right, let's keep going. Let's talk about display. And again, when we're talking about display, we're talking about any display-based advertising. So we're talking about Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Pinterest, display networks, all of that. So in the last 2 weeks, we've already been talking about that we were expecting to see volume up. Volume is still up, but I think at this point now, and stage 3 lockdown, I think we're probably not going to be seeing a whole lot more increases from at least in Australia. So I think we're probably almost at that point where all the extra eyeballs that we're going to get from people being at home probably has already happened or about to. Maybe the one last thing that might give us one last big jump in volume might be if we go into a stage 4 lockdown where people can't even go to work at all, and then they're 100% forced to work from home. So I think right now we're still in it's highly recommended that you work from home, but there are still offices that can operate. Whereas I think once that changes, that'll probably be the last big leap for display-based volume to increase. And again, the increase is due to just self-isolation, working from home. And again, more people working from home for longer means that there's more online traffic, essentially means there's more ad inventory, more ad slots that are available to be purchased by advertisers. And so as we talked about in week 1 and as we saw in week 2, CPMs were down, and that's very much still the case. CPMs are still very much down. Some of the other agency founders that we were talking with were saying that they haven't basically seen these CPMs like this in years. And so CPMs are down. And again, would be good to look at your own data to see where this works for you. For a lot of our clients, this is what we're seeing in that CPMs actually are down across the board. So the big surprise for me that I shared last week was that I would have assumed that CPMs would have only really been down for top of funnel or maybe middle of funnel. But actually the fact that CPMs are down for bottom of funnel as well gives you some hint that of just how much more inventory is available. And either that or that brands are also pulling out. So the combination of the two. Again, as mentioned last week, the issue with the bottom of funnel and middle of funnel, even though your CPMs are down, your conversion rates are probably still it's still down. So the actual buying intent is less there. Although even that in the last few days, we have started seeing, I'm not going to say normal, but we have started seeing maybe a slight recovery, I guess, as some of those stimulus packages have come through. We're starting to see just a little bit of a more positive return back to some numbers that we were seeing before. So just be checking that out on your accounts. The big one still is the same though, and that's the top of funnel. Like top of funnel CPMs we're seeing down by 50%, 60%, and really that's the area of opportunity, which we'll still go further into today. As another step, similar to search, is that be looking out for your smart bidding. Be looking out for anything to do with AI bidding where the volumes may have been affected by coronavirus. So if you need to consolidate maybe some of your ad sets so that you can get some volume back up so that then algorithms can hit those targets. Again, Facebook, we're looking at they're wanting around 50 conversions or 50 results per week in the last 7 days. So if each of your ad sets aren't getting that, then maybe it might be a time to either consolidate those so that you have one ad set that is getting 50 micro conversions or 50 conversions a week, or you may have to look at going back to manual. So just be looking out for that. And probably the last, maybe more interesting part about display, and Chris, you might want to speak into this, is that because of the government restrictions on gatherings, basically all production houses are stopping, or at least they're trying to scramble to how do they do production while remote. And so what this is meaning, or what this is flowing on for us, is that we're beginning to get delays in getting creative. We're having to improvise and move to, what could we do with stills or stocks that have been approved, stock images that have been approved previously, and can we make animations out of it?
I think there's just obviously around what you can do within Facebook, a lot of the video edit tools or built-in tools and stitching together slideshows. If you can keep them still to 15 seconds for top of funnels, going to be really good. And I guess what we're probably going to see is a bit of a shift away from some of our YouTube budgets, given that it's not as simple just to put something stitched together. There is a bit of a production quality that's needed. So I guess with clients trying to return to old footage, see what we can cut up to make something fresh. But it'll be interesting to see how this one kind of plays out over the coming days. Maybe some new innovative ways of producing ads might be a positive from this time.
Yeah, so I think what we're going to see over the next few months is that we're probably going to see some either very crappy ads, or we're going to see some a lot of use of animations of stills and that kind of thing. Like so how do we actually do this as production houses? How do we actually get talent together? I think we're going to see a few challenges like that. So it'll be interesting to see over the next 3 months to 6 months, how do brands do their ads? So look out for that one. Okay, let's keep going. So what are brands doing? So in the last 7 days, what have we seen brands doing? And again, we shared this in week 1 and week 2, and we'll still do the same here, is please make sure you're doing your housekeeping. I think we're beginning to see this happen more and more now. So brands have done it in the last 2 weeks. They've gone in, they've done an audit of their creative and their copy. So basically, any images or any brand assets that you've had where it's showing groups of people, clearly that's no longer relevant. So we're starting to see that roll out now, where it's either just object based, or there'd be one person in the image and maybe more of a home environment rather than these, group settings. One of the tips that was recommended to us from a chat that we have with one of our conversion rate optimization partner agencies was, he was saying that one of the things that he would highly recommend for all brands right now is that you really, if you haven't done it right now, you need to put your welcome bar up. So have some kind of welcome bar or a smart bar that just is at the very top of your website. Just make sure that you're being clear that this is what's happening for during coronavirus for your brand. So are you still in operation? Are you still delivering? Are there any restrictions? Are there any issues? And we'll also now particularly now that it's known that coronavirus can exist on surfaces. Like, what are you doing there? Are you actually doing anything on your packaging, in your posting? So what kind of measures are you taking so that there's an assurance for a customer at the other end that, yes, they're going to get their package and it's going to be safe. So if you could be putting something like that, that's a real must-do now, and also keep sharing your return policy there.
I think, Adam, some of the terms are contactless. That's sort of the main, if you're looking for the language to use. We bought my sister-in-law a microwave this last week, and from the good guys was contactless. So I think go and look really at other competitors or the large retailers. If you're stuck on the wording, it is tricky how to word it, because you clearly want to be, I guess, empathetic to the situation. But you also want to be clear. So Raul also shared, this message isn't the one to be cute on or branded on. It's the one to be really, really clear. It's the sort of the fear. You're trying to dissipate that fear to say it is safe to buy from us. So contact us less or whatever it might be. Have a look at some other brands. Really good. Okay, let's keep going. So let's talk through the funnel again. So here are some ideas that we've started seeing, and these are some of the ideas that we share internally with our team, and we break down. So I think we're going to call this saying it without saying it. So I think the last 2 weeks, clearly the world has come in shock, and we're all happy to talk about coronavirus. But I think what we're starting to see in the last 7 days is we're figuring out ways of how to say it without saying it. So to keep what you're saying is relevant, yet there's a lightheartedness to it, and people know what you're talking about. So great example, Kmart just released a couple of ads this week. Keep the family comfy and entertained. Ideas to get comfy at home. So clearly they understand the situation. They're saying it without saying it, and yet it keeps the ad light. It keeps it relevant. And I think that's really the right approach, particularly if you've got a very, very broad base. I think maybe perhaps if you've got a very, very targeted niche customer base, then you probably know how to talk to that audience really well. And if they're into sarcasm, if they're into this or that, then you can go down that route. But I guess if you've got a bit more of a broader audience base, then I think this is a really, really nice way to go about it. Say it without saying it. Here's another interesting idea that came up, and I guess you might be able to think of this a bit more broadly. This was an offer from Dominos Pizzas, where now they're allowing whoever it is, the boss, to organize a pizza to be delivered to their entire remote team all at the same time. So basically order once and it gets delivered everywhere at the same time. And I think this really brings back a point that Mark Ritson made, I think it was in LinkedIn. Chris, do you want to talk into this one? Because I think he's one of your faves. Yeah, I think we've got a clip of them for another smart use of copy. But yeah, marketers in pajamas. The tribe chat with Jules Lund, Mark Ritson just shared around. I think he shared in his article as well on Marketing Week, but that often, and particularly our world, advertising, we're the P for promotion, right? So we're thinking about comms and messaging, and clearly that's probably where everyone went to in the first couple of weeks, and rightly so. But there is the other Ps, and we often don't have to think about them because they're given to us. The client's setting prices and the distribution, but just that thought of right now, and we are having a lot of conversations with clients as maybe their distribution has been changed. So retail obviously can't sell where they were, and I think this is a great example from a Domino's for people working at home. They're used to doing Friday lunches. Whoever's ordering doesn't want to do 10 orders, 20 orders, whatever it might be. So it's marketing. They haven't changed anything to do with the price. It's not a discount. It's not even talking necessarily about their response to COVID. It's just subtly saying it without saying it, but focusing on a change of distribution. So I think if you do have options or availability, we're hopefully going to test that a couple, maybe Adam, over this next week ourselves, and can share some of those results. So I think, go back to the other Ps. A lot of us studied marketing, and those that didn't, just follow Mark Ritson. He'll tell you everything you need to know. Yeah, absolutely. So if there's an idea, if the core or the seed of this idea could work for you, definitely be looking into that. So can you do something with either your product or the place? And that might be a clever way to, and even give you something else to say other than sales. So have a look into that. And just what Chris referred to before. So Facebook have released a lunch and learn, basically, but they're calling it marketers in pajamas. And again, I think it's just another example of
again, saying it without saying it. Everyone understands what you're talking about. So marketers in pajamas, perfect. Have a bit of fun, be a bit lighthearted about it. And I think the audience then acknowledges that you acknowledge the situation too. Again, going to the top of funnel, we shared a few examples of this already, where where brands have either done something clever with their logo or their brands. Here's a creative piece from Volvo, and one from Audi. I think these kinds of public service announcements, using brand as public service announcements, I think we're probably done now. I think it's we're week 3 now. Everybody gets it. Everyone knows it. So I think that's pretty much done. Where we saw a really interesting activation though was, I think, this one from Burger King. Here it's showing people how to make your own Whopper from home. So I think it's a really clever activation, a really clever way of saying it. Well, maybe in this case they are saying it and saying it, because they're talking about they're calling it the Whopper, the quarantine Whopper. Chris, going back to your point about how do you make things fun at home, especially with the kids. And so the client that you're talking about, they were talking about making a soccer ball, but instead of having a normal soccer ball, making it out of rubbish, which is a lot of what has to happen over in the developed world. So here's an activation from Burger King showing you how can you make your own burger at home. So I think if you can do something similar, if there's a creative aspect of what it is you're doing that could trigger that idea for your customers at home. So I think that's probably a seed again that you might be able to play with.
I think just you got to stay on brand, right? Like we spoke about in recent weeks, this is top of funnel, this is branding and awareness. It's never been cheaper to get reach for branding. You'll never reach more people at a better value. Don't do that with something that's just cute that is not on brand. And I think the Volvo and Audi social distancing ads, or whatever, I don't think they even advertise it, but I'd highly recommend don't go down that. You're almost showing yourself to be 3 weeks late or 3 weeks irrelevant. If so it's important to think through what that is. Burger King clearly can be, lighthearted, even mention quarantine, whereas a lot of other brands probably couldn't go there in terms of doing that. Someone in our team also did mention they do seem to have picked some quite premium brands in there as well, just to make sure it was more expensive than buying a Whopper. So when you can buy it again, you can still get back. But that cuts through. It was shared so often. I pretty much saw it on every social channel over this last week. So fantastic top of funnel activation. Yeah, probably should have been an animation or video to get retention, but we won't hold that against them.
And again, I think be thinking about these and paying attention to what other brands are doing at top of funnel, because this again is where the opportunity is. This is where you're going to be able to build a brand, at a price that we haven't seen for years. So be doing this and be paying attention as well. Probably the last thing I'll say about Burger King is that I've been surprised at how fantastic their marketing and advertising has been. For if you think about what it is they're offering a burger, it's one of those things where you probably think, how much is there to say really about a burger at the end of the day? Once you've said it. But they continually find such new and novel and clever ways, and it really is inspiring to go, well, if they can do that with a burger, then what could you do with your brand? What could we do? It's almost any brand. There's probably something you can do. So definitely be looking at Burger King's, not just during the coronavirus, but all the way through, and what they've been doing. Really, really good examples. All right, let's keep going. What else have we seen in the last 7 days? So maybe more so in the last 2 weeks, I guess. We've seen particularly the response from our supermarkets has led the way in terms of putting together an elderly seniors or carers hour, and they've now followed that up. So basically, 1 hour, I think it's every second day in the morning, where they get priority access to the store. And now they follow that up with a basics box. So even if they're not able to make it to the store, that they can order a basics box, and that can be delivered to them, and it's just got all the essentials that they need. So I think there's probably something in that the online world could look to, in that just prioritizing, because right now everything we've seen so far has been pretty indiscriminate. Like any sales that we see, they're pretty much just to anyone and everyone. But looking at how the supermarkets actually have led the way in terms of being able to target a specific demographic and just go, these guys need a lot more help. these guys need a lot more assistance. So what can we do to serve them? So be thinking about that for your brand. Like, are there maybe particular sub segments or sub demographics in your brand that might actually be able to use some extra help? And probably the big one that I'm almost betting that we're going to see in the next 7 days, we started to see this surfacing in the last 7 days, is the healthcare and emergency workers. Now, clearly, they're the heroes of today. Clearly, these are the guys who are on the front line, risking their lives every single time they go into work. So, again, supermarkets have led the way. Like last week, we saw them putting together a healthcare and emergency workers hour. But I'm betting that what we're going to start seeing over the next couple of weeks are, just certain things there to celebrate our new heroes. Okay, so one of the things you may have seen over the last 7 days has been this initiative, Buy Them a Coffee. You might have seen that going viral on Facebook and Insta. So essentially, it's just encouraging anybody to be able to put some money aside to donate coffees for nurses and doctors all across Australia. So really great initiative. I think we're going to see a lot more of these as we cheer on, really the people who are on the front lines. And again, I just saw this yesterday, I think it was. So this fashion magazine they changed their covers to, again, feature the heroes of today. So I think if there's something that could tie in with your brand there, I think that could be something that could really, really work well. Again, we're talking top of funnel.
I think, keep it on brand. If you're going to, don't force your way in. It may be the case of doing something around a PR initiative rather than advertising. But if it makes sense to do it from a brand point of view, I think it's it's just a great thing to be able to do right now, really.
Okay. And lastly, again, thinking top of funnel, return back to the study that we reviewed last week from Kantar. So Kantar did some research into what people have been sharing on social since the coronavirus started. And essentially, we've got these 6 categories of things that people are sharing. So memes, a longing to be back outside, what it's like to be living, a laptop life at home. They've been sharing about just the cozy and safe feeling that you get by being at home and being with your loved ones. They've been sharing about creativity and craft, as we mentioned earlier today. And also they've been sharing about what the new essentials are, the new things that people didn't even realize were the lifelines that they had at home, but are now becoming, the real things that are helping us to get by every day. So I think these are fantastic little bites of opportunity, really, for brands to realign, basically to be able to put something out that's on brand, that aligns with the things that people are already doing at home, that people are already going to relate to, but to be able to put that out in a way that is relevant, makes sense, and can be done at top of funnel in a way that's going to have broad relevance.
I was actually just thinking as you were speaking, I guess often what defines a demographic is what you're doing out of the home in terms of where I work, location, style of work, what I do for entertainment. Am I into sports or food or drinks? And, now that we're at home, this kind of, that no seriously category, for example, I'm a parent of 2. The only memes I see are parent related, but we've got a Slack channel. The rest of the team don't have kids, so I don't share mine as often, but it is funny seeing the memes that are shared and kind of those lines of what the demographic is moving forward. So I think that sort of self-love or taking a moment that might come through in sofa and snuggles or however that might be, or longing for nature, like going for a walk by myself in the mornings, obviously socially distancing, but those sort of things are becoming really treasured. So I think thinking through those from a brand point of view, again, where does that kind of make relevance and speak into your demographic? Because those lines are sort of, blurred or maybe getting redrawn based on what's your actual home situation. Do you even apartment living versus a house? I imagine that feeling of staying at home feels really, really different right now, depending on how many bedrooms, do you have a backyard, all of these things. So, I hope Kantar should go a bit deeper over these next few weeks as well. So we'll keep a lookout on anything that they're putting out to share with you all.
I think also just to also not miss the magnitude of this too is that, one of the things that I guess for good, for better or worse, one of the things that we as internet marketers love is that, there's a niche of a niche of a niche, no matter what you're into, you could probably find other people somewhere in the world who are into that thing. And so you can very easily hyper-target. But the benefit of the hyper-targeting is offset for brands where you're trying to reach as many people as possible. And really, for the first time, everybody all over the world is going through one thing. And so for the first time, every brand in the world could talk about the same thing, and everyone who's seeing that message gets it. And so that's a really, really rare opportunity. It really, the last time these kinds of things happened was pretty much before the internet. So we're talking about whatever it was, the latest episode of Friends or The Simpsons or something like that. Those sorts of mass TV shows where everyone was watching it, so you could make a reference and everyone would get it. This is really the equivalent of that. So so this is really, really, it might seem frivolous, but actually it's actually really, really powerful. So definitely worth paying attention to and seeing how could your brand align with something like this. All right, let's keep moving on. So last section was the freebies, and so this is maybe a little bit more lighthearted now that we can get to this side. A couple of good news, and you may have seen this shared before. So Google have released they're going to offer $340 million of ad credits for small to medium enterprises. There is criteria to do with that. So basically, you had to have been on Google Ads, I believe, since January 2019, and there's a qualification process for that. But they're going to release basically some ad credits back to small and medium businesses. So that's some good news. Facebook announced it. Actually, Facebook announced it first, $100 million grants for small to medium enterprises. And also that it may not only be ad credits, there could actually be some cash grants as well. But again, for both Google and Facebook, the details of those actually haven't really been fully worked out yet. So I'm still waiting on both. We've been approached by our reps to share how it's going to work out. But in terms of details, we haven't really seen too many details yet. So I expect to see that in the next 7 days, and we'll update you on this call. In terms of freebies, and we talked about in the last section, we talked about being able to put your brand values out there. So if you did have a value for whatever it is, for generosity, say, then now might be a good time to lead that. To be able to put something out there that is generous at the top of the funnel. Let your customers, let your fans know that that you can be there for them in these tough times. One of our team members, she saw this in her feed from one of the brands she's following, and the quote she said was that, "I'm never going to forget this," in a positive light. That brand has now permanently solidified who they stand for in her mind, and that was for a fairly small thing that they wrote, but it really meant a lot to her at the time. In the same way, we're seeing brands giving things away all over the place, and you probably are too. Probably will note, just because maybe a bit more digitally relevant for us as advertisers, but Google Hangouts, they're putting their pro version of Hangouts for free. So there's just some extra features that you can make use of there. And also Microsoft Teams has also put their product out for free. So I think Teams and Zoom have definitely been a big winner during this whole work from home period. Some other brands putting things out. LinkedIn have put a remote learning path out. So if you're struggling to put together a remote working package for your team, then some really, really good classes and lessons here. So just Google for that, LinkedIn remote learning path, and that's a whole course that they've given out now for free that you used to have to pay for. And also Adweek and IBM, they've actually created what they call the Institute for Brand Marketing. It's only just launched, but they've got 2 courses, again, which would have been paid courses, but they're now releasing for free. So if you wanted to do some learning around brand marketing, really, really good place to go. All right, your turn. So we've just shared a little bit about what we're seeing on our accounts, what we're seeing across the web from other brands, other ad agencies, what they're doing. So we've shared a little bit from our side, from the data side, from the creativity side. We shared a few resources and freebies. Clearly, we're just one team. We're a bunch of 8 people, so we're doing the best that we can to sort of collate and put this together in a useful package for, firstly, for our clients, but also for the wider advertising community. So we'd love to hear from you. What are you seeing on your accounts? Are you seeing similar things? Are you seeing different things? Have you got some different observations or some different responses that might help? Love to hear from you on that. And finally, if you're a brand and you could really use some help right now, then we're here to help. As Chris and I mentioned earlier, we're from an agency called Intentional. We've been specializing in digital for the last 9 years. Prior to that, I was 2 years in digital marketing freelance. So it's been 10 plus, almost 11 years now for me, purely being in the digital advertising marketing space. So got a lot of experience between the two of us. Chris used to head up digital with Nestle. So got a lot of things that we can share, and we'd love to be able to see if we can help and serve you. We hope some of the content we've shared with you has been already helpful and given you ideas that you can action right away.
As we mentioned earlier, we had a chat with a conversion rate optimization agency owner this last week, so Raul at Conversionary. So we'll be sharing some links for that, and look out for a few other chats we'll have with other specialists that just might be able to help you out during these times, on top of advertising, understanding that you're probably, if you're watching this, you're looking after quite a few different areas right now for your brand. So as much as we can just add some value and be proactive in doing that, that's our heart at the moment.
Okay, well, let's call this a day for today, and I hope there's been something in here that can help you. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Ciao.
Hi, I'm Adam Sugihto. Thanks for watching this video. Do you feel that if your advertising stayed the way it is, that your best days are ahead? Are you going to just watch as the market keeps eating into your margins without putting up a fight? If you're here to learn, click on that subscribe button to get more video content from the team. But if it's time to take action, click on the link in the description box below and get in touch with the team at Intentional. We're here to help you convert potential.